So while we were here debating about the government of national unity, the EFF and the ANC, they decided to go on an international stage and hang our dirty laundry for everyone to see.
Well, we're very lucky now to be joined by Zuka Godlimpi, Deputy ANC National Spokesperson, member of the NEC, and Veronica Menter, National Chairperson of the Economic Freedom Fighters Party. Veronica, let's get started, jump right into it. I mean, you've called this coalition a consolidation of white monopoly over the economy. What do you mean? Who benefits from this new unity government?
Yeah, good day, and thank you very much for having us. We're calling this exactly what it is because it does not seek to redress all the atrocities of the past, because the DA way it's governing, it has never redressed anything. The levels of inequality, if you were to focus on the Western Cape where the DA is governing, it is very clear that where Black people, Africans in particular, are residing, they reside in pigsties. If you were to go to the townships of Khayelitsha, Gugulethu, Langa, Nyanga, they live with all the sorts of service delivery that cannot be attended to them. If ever they have sewer spillages, they sit with those sewer spillages for more than 2 days. But if you go to the leafy suburbs of the Western Cape, where the DA governing white people reside, service delivery comes to them in a matter of 2 minutes. And to go to the FF Plus, it's even worse. They have made a demand that Orania, which is designed to only accommodate Afrikaner people who refuse to stay and be part of our society and live with Black people in particular. How do we go back to such a horrendous and horrible history of people who want to isolate themselves from Black people because they see Black people as animals? They do not value the life of a Black person. They do not see us as human beings rather than that of slaves. Therefore, these are the same people whose manifesto is actually driving that employment. The Department of Employment must not utilize regulations in terms of regulating minimum wage. The markets must decide. If you open your factory or you open your shop, you will decide how much you pay workers. There must not be a law imposed upon you on how much you must pay. That means we are being taken back to slavery. The days where we were oppressed, the days where exploitation was not accounted for, the days where white people were doing as they wish and seeing Black people as only slaves, but nothing else. And we refuse to recognize and give a decency and respect to such a government, because it's not a government that is going to be progressive. It's a government that is going to take us back to our past, but then we will see in Parliament what will happen. But as far as this cabinet, and it is bloated, just to imagine the fact that you have to increase a number of portfolios simply because you have to accommodate the white supremacists and accommodate the demands that were undermining a Black government because you want to be supervised. Why should you even increase cabinet instead of reducing it? Because as far as it stands, South Africa, we are already in a depleted fiscus, where we have cut budget in many of our social spending, and our economic cluster is battling in developing and empowerment of Black societies in particular. Creating employment is difficult in South Africa. Industries are falling apart. We are not establishing any new industries. All the economic zones in South
Sorry,
Africa
Veronica, to interrupt. I just want to bring it.
You know, when Veronica Menter was busy talking about the DA and how the DA mistreats Black people in the Western Cape, I was actually waiting for her to tell this lady of RT about the governance of the EFF. I was waiting for her to actually portray the contrast of the government of the DA and the government of the EFF. You guys were there in Ekurhuleni. How did things turn out in Ekurhuleni? and all other municipalities where the EFF is, how did everything turn out? So if you are going to accuse another political party of not paying attention to the needs of black people, why don't you say that we, where we govern, we actually take care of black people? The spillages and the sewages that you see in Langa and all those townships that you're speaking about in Western Cape, you will never see those spillages where the EFF governs. Why don't you say that? And again, guys, when it comes to the issue of the market and deciding how much these people should pay the workers, why must you open a business and allow a government to tell you how much you should pay the people? Why must you do that? Don't you think this is one of the reasons why people decide not to open up the businesses? Don't you think this is one of the reasons why the businesses are closing? Because the government itself, it is failing to provide employment for the people. But when people open up their own businesses, they are there to tell people that this is how much you should pay the people. And you say that the government is bloated because the ANC is trying to accommodate the white supremacists, these people that hate black people. But you are not being genuine about the fact that the ANC has forged a government of national unity that consists of 10 political parties. And all of those political parties have to be incentivized for actually helping the ANC to govern the country. Why are you making it look like right now we have 70 ministers plus deputy ministers? Of course, it's insane. Why are you making it look like the ANC went for 70 ministers only to accommodate all of these political parties that you are talking about? Why don't you acknowledge other political parties that have joined into the government of national unity? And some of these political parties have actually gotten the ministerial positions. Some of them have gotten the deputy ministerial positions. Why are you gaslighting people? I mean, why are you not being transparent with your information? Like, this is something that I do not get. Why are you not being transparent with your information? You are not. Now you say, you make it look like the ANC actually capitulated to the demands of the DA. But if we go back, you remember the DA demanded like 12 ministerial positions or something like that, and the ANC only offered them 6. Why don't you say that? The ANC only offered them 6. It's half of what the DA actually wanted. And again, this is part of the negotiations. This is how people negotiate. When you get into the negotiation room, you try to get as much as possible. Just because a certain political party said we want certain ministers, it doesn't mean that this is what they are going to get. But they are negotiating for them to get those ministers. Patriotic Alliance was gunning for the Minister of Police and the Minister of Home Affairs, but they didn't get the Minister of Police and the Minister of Home Affairs. This is normally how negotiations are. But right now, you're making it look like the ANC capitulated to the demands of the DA, whereas the ANC cut those demands of the DA by half. Guys.
And Zuko here. I mean, Zuko, what's your response? I mean, the truth is that the DA is obviously a largely white-led party. It has voiced opposition to some of the ANC's, what you could consider black empowerment projects. I mean, given that South Africa's population is overwhelmingly black, is there no concern from the ANC about the messaging to the electorate, to all the South Africans?
Well, that was the concern of the ANC going to the election. It remained the concern of the ANC going to the negotiation table. But I just want us not to be sidetracked by a hyperbole that is not rooted on fact. So the entire critique proceeds from the false impression that the GNU is a bipartisan pact between the ANC and the DA. It is not. It includes 11 political parties. So the DA doesn't have this exaggerated power that people present it to have in that arrangement. And the DA doesn't even have as much of a footing in the economic cluster as we have been told. So if the criticism is about industrial policy is still fully under the control of the ANC. I don't see how the DA will supposedly now prognostice the ANC towards the direction that the ANC doesn't want. In any case, out of the negotiation process, there was a statement of intent that was the condition for each party joining the GNU. And the DA did try to negotiate away some of the founding principles or the organizing principles of the GNU. And their proposals were resoundingly rejected. For instance, they came to the table negotiating that there must be an agreement about sealed mandates, a framework in which each political party would be allowed to pursue its own policy discourse in the ministries that are under their control. But that position did not win. It was resoundingly pushed back against. Why? It's because the nature of the South African executive as established by the Constitution is such that it has got to be a single executive of government under the executive authority of the president, and therefore there can't be sealed mandates. And if you read through the signed statement of intent, which the DA agreed to, it outlines the minimum parameters for policy that this government is going to pursue. And by and large, the consensus was built around the substance of the ANC manifesto. There is a commitment to industrial policy. There is a commitment to redress and transformation. There is a commitment to sustaining the existing policies. For instance, there is no threat to the minimum wage, even though the DA on its own is opposed to the minimum wage, but it would have to canvass above 60% consensus in the GNU if it were to ever be able to repeal the minimum wage. So the ANC and the rest of the progressive black parties within that framework will still be able to defend the policies that exist. We're not building the South African state anew. We're not building a new policy platform. All policies that have existed from 1994 up to date are still in effect and will be the basis of this government. So the DA could be guilty of all the things that the EFF is saying in the Western Cape, which are true. We agree with them on that one. But the EFF must not commit the mistake of falsely presenting the DA as if it has as much bargaining power in the GNU as it doesn't have. And I must just make the point that the ANC did not wake up in the morning and choose to form a GNU. It was brought to that position by the indeterminate outcomes of the election results. That's one. The second point is the issue about the size of the cabinet. People must be careful not to conflate two things. I repeat this point not for the first time. The problem of the argument about the huge public sector wage bill on the one hand and the size of the cabinet. You cannot say South Africa's fiscal problem is a function of adding 2 more ministries. And ministries are not departments. So we've got to be careful about how we pursue that argument. And in any case, the ANC still has, as it did say through the president before, that its principal position would be a reduced cabinet for efficiency in coordination. But the problem of the GNU brought to bear the reality that politically you have to forge an agreement that all political parties can buy into, and that therefore necessitated to readjust your position.
I understand. Veronica, I mean, obviously we've talked so far mainly about domestic policy. What I do want to ask you is that South Africa has really sort of...
And the ANC also, like the ANC, they can agree all they want about the conditions of black people in the Western Cape, but they must not pretend like black people are, where the ANC governs are having it better. Like, they must not do that. They must not do that. So I think this is a border issue instead of, and I think this is how South Africans should actually look at these issues. Instead of us looking at these issues and trying to blame certain political parties and saying that, look how black people are living where you are. Like, this is a border issue. All the political parties, they need to come together and say, guys, we need to uplift the black people from these conditions that they are living in. Because where the ANC governs, black people are still having it hard. Where the DA is in the Western Cape, some of those townships, black people are having it hard. And you look at the political parties like the EFF, where they govern the municipalities, where they are or where they formed the coalitions, black people are still having it hard. So instead of actually blaming other political parties and pretending like we care about black people and you don't care about black people, there should actually be a consensus of how we are going to uplift black people from these conditions that they are living in, instead of blaming political parties. So the political parties that we have in South Africa, man, it's almost as if these people are not mature enough to sit down and say, guys, how can we actually uplift these people from these conditions that they are living in? Because everywhere where we are, black people are having it hard. All over South Africa, black people are having it hard. I don't care who governs what municipality. I don't care who governs what province. But if you get there in a certain area where you will find majority of black people, you will find that there are sewages, you will find that there are illegal dumpings, you will find that there is crime, you will find there is prostitution and all sorts of things. So instead of these people actually being mature enough to come up with the solutions that are going to uplift the people from all of those situations, and they are busy pointing fingers and pretending like we care about black people. You don't care about black people. That person cares about black people. We don't care about black people. And quite frankly, man, black people are sick and tired of these things. Black people are sick and tired of political parties pointing fingers at each other. You point fingers at that person, but knowing very well that you are guilty of the same thing. You know very well that you are guilty of the same thing. So why are we here trying to point fingers? Why are we here trying to point fingers? The fact of the matter is that where you will find the majority of black people, you will find all of these issues that we are talking about. And the fact that there hasn't been any consensus about how we're going to move forward, it shows you that there's still a lot of problems. There's still a lot of problems. So what's wrong with these political parties that we have? What's wrong with these political parties?
You've led this charge in recent years. What I do want to ask you is that South Africa has really sort of led this charge in recent years when we're talking about reforming global governments, including, for example, giving African voices at the UN Security Council. I mean, the DA is pro-West, it's pro-Israel, it's anti-Russia. Are you worried that South Africa's foreign policy, obviously its non-alignment historically, could maybe be compromised with this new government?
Absolutely. And to demonstrate that this is threatening the sovereignty of our country, look at what the DA did just before elections, writing to the US that it must come and soup.
And one thing I don't understand about the chairperson of the EFF, why is he making the ANC defend the DA? Why are you making the ANC to defend the DA? Because if this Russian host knew that this is what was going to take place, maybe you would have invited a DA member to come and defend themselves. But right now you have the EFF going on and on and on and on about the DA, whereas you have the person of the African National Congress, and this is the person that you are supposedly have to expose on an international stage. So why is the EFF continuing to go on about the DA, knowing very well that the DA is not there to defend themselves?
Is threatening the sovereignty of our country. Look at what the DA did just before elections, writing to the US that it must come and supervise South Africa, because a black government and a black IEC led by very capacitated black professionals cannot deal with the matters of elections without the West supervision. It's always been the ambition of the DA, and in fact in its DNA, that the West must rule South Africa and all of its policies. And also to address some of the issues, to demonstrate that the GNU is not necessarily what my colleague is talking about. They say if ever the DA had to advance any of its policies, it will have to canvass 60% of the ground within the cabinet. All of them combined, the smaller parties with the ANC, they don't have 60%. They need the DA to have 60% and above. Therefore, the DA can do as it pleases. It can bargain for whatever power it wants if the ANC wants to pass any progressive law. Hence, we said to the ANC, you do not have to go to the far right in order to have a progressive government that is going to deal with the issues of redress. You can go and identify any other black party. We were even clear to say, if you are not favorable to the EFF being in government with you, but please do not go to the DA and then FF+. As things stand, they are stuck with the DA because the DA is the one that gives it, the ANC, the bargaining power in terms of that 60%, which my colleague is talking about. And earlier on, I was with Helen Zille on Power FM today. Helen Zille says, we are in government and we are there to advance the call that we have made in our own manifesto. Therefore, us firing DGs and firing staff and reorganizing the departments that were going to be in charge of as the DA is only to deal with the policies of the DA. We are not there. We are not kind of adopted. We are also in government. Therefore, we are going to make sure that we advance and we provide the services which we have called upon in terms of our manifesto. So you can see there is no way out of this grand coalition of the DA and the ANC. The other smaller parties, they are just there, but there is no meaningful contribution in terms of bargaining powers that they have.
I mean, Zuko, I do want to ask you one thing. I mean, there is one area which the ANC and the DA obviously have very different stance on, that is Gaza. I mean, considering that the South African government went so far as to bring a historic genocide case against Israel, the ICJ, which the DA did not support, does being in bed with the pro-Israel DA not pose a bit of a moral dilemma?
It does not. And
I mean, what moral dilemma? What moral dilemma? Like, the issues of the ANC and the DA, they are focusing on what's best for the people of this country. They are focusing on what's best for the people of this country, and it is not a big deal for the ANC and the DA to actually differ on the matter of international affairs. They can differ on the matter of international affairs, but when it comes to the moral and everything, I can tell you for free that South Africans on the ground, they are not talking about this issue of Gaza and Israel. They are not talking about it. So, like, I don't know why people are trying to make it look like this issue of Gaza and Israel, like, it is such a moving issue, like, and the fact that the DA is pro-Israel and ANC is pro-Gaza, it is going to shift the people on the ground. South Africa has a lot of problems. We have a huge unemployment rate. We have a problem with crime. We have a problem with infrastructure. These are the things that South Africans are worried about. South Africans are not worried about the fact that Israel, ANC and DA do not see eye to eye, especially when it comes to the matters of the international stage. These are not the issues that are shaking the people on the ground. The people on the ground, they want work. The people on the ground, they want the companies to open up. The people on the ground, they actually want investment to come into the country so that the businesses can open. The people on the ground, they are opening up their own businesses and they will love support from the government. This is what the people want. So this thing of trying to pretend like this issue of Gaza and Israel has weight, it does not have weight on the lives of average South Africans.
It only poses the moral dilemma if people are deliberately misunderstanding the balance of power in this government. The stance of the ANC on Russia, on China, on the US, on Israel, on Palestine will remain the same. Why is that? It's because even on the founding agreement of the GNU, in the negotiation, it was ventilated and agreed upon that the policies of the ANC on progressive internationalism that have been adopted in government, they remain the same. Let's count the numbers of what we have in cabinet. There are 32 cabinet ministers. The DA only has 6. In what world would an argument be mounted that 6 people are going to overpower the reasoning of 28 people?
And again, the fact that even the Minister of International Affairs, this person still belongs to the ANC. This is Ronald Lamola. So the position that South Africa has actually taken on an international stage, it is not going to change. Ronald Lamola is simply going to continue to say the things that Naledi Pandor was saying. So for these people to try to pretend like now the tone is gonna change, the South African tone is gonna change, like it does not make any sense.
It's of 26 people. It's an illogical and hyperbolic position. The position of the South African government in Gaza will be articulated by Minister Ronald Lamola,
Exactly.
who is the Minister of International Relations, who is the very person who led the Department of Justice in South Africa to file the case against Israel in the International Court of Justice.
But these are the things that they are not saying, man.
That status quo remains. And I must just answer what Comrade Mente is saying. I think Comrade Mente and her comrades in the EFF have got to familiarize themselves with the statement of intent and not peddle the propaganda of Helen Zille and the DA on how to interpret the statement of intent. It is not true that it is the ANC that needs to canvass 60%. Let's take the Gaza policy, for instance. If the DA were to try change the position of South Africa on Gaza,
Ah, come on, man. So, guys, I don't know if he's gonna be able to start from where I was, man. Come on. Man, like, it makes no sense.
Well, we're very lucky.
In what world would an argument be mounted that 6 people are going to overpower the reasoning of 28 people? It's of 26 people. It's an illogical and hyperbolic position. The position of the South African government in Gaza will be articulated by Minister Ronald Namula, who is the Minister of International Relations, who is the very person who led the Department of Justice in South Africa to file the case against Israel in the International Court of Justice. That status quo remains. And I must just answer what Comrade Mente is saying. I think Comrade Mente and her comrades in the EFF have got to familiarize themselves with the statement of intent and not peddle the propaganda of Helen Zille and the DA on how to interpret the statement of intent. It is not true that it is the ANC that needs to canvass 60%. Let's take the Gaza policy, for instance. If the DA were to try change the position of South Africa on Gaza, the statement of intent says in order to repeal an existing policy, they would have to canvass 60% of the seats in parliament, not just in the GN, which means that would have to include the members that are held by the EFF and Umkhonto. So as far as the ANC is concerned, it is the right-wing DA that has locked itself in a predicament where it cannot openly pursue its reactionary policy agenda. In any case, Helen Zille commits the mistake, which the person that you are quoting, commits the mistake of advancing the position that they went with the negotiation table, but pretends as if that position won the day. It did not. That which she says they are going to do could only happen if there was an agreement that the government will be run on the basis of sealed mandates. But even in that context, it would mean the DA would have, as it does not even now, would have no way of constraining the ANC pursuing a progressive internationalism because the ANC controls the Department of International Relations and Foreign Policy. So on that front, the entire proposition does it right. The ANC, by the way, in its meeting with the EFF on the 28th on Friday, and the EFF agreed to this thing, that even if the EFF were not to join the GNU, but there would be an open channel of communication and political cooperation between the two organizations on the basis of progressive politics. So the GNU was just a framework of establishing government. Even if, by the way, the EFF, the DA were to pull out of the GNU with its 86 members, the ANC would still have more than 201 votes in parliament to have a majority. So the DA does not have the kind of power that people assume it has. And it will have no effect on the progressive outlook of South African domestic and foreign policy. And that is incorporated in the statement of intent. It is there for everybody to see. It is the basis of this government, not the hyperbolic charges that were being accused of.
I want to ask very quickly if both of you could answer in less than a minute. Veronica first. I mean, I don't think it's controversial to say that some of EFF's policies are quite radical. Nationalisation of key sectors, some comments made about white people, the confiscation of land. Do the results of the election show that South Africans don't yet feel ready for such radical shifts? Very quickly.
Yeah, South Africans are ready for the radical shift. However, as we know that it's a multi-party democracy where people have choices of what they need. But in reality and in all honesty, the economy of South Africa will not get anywhere if we do not resolve the issue of land, if we do not resolve the issue of a state bank, if we do not resolve the issue of the financial sectors that are exploiting our consumers in South Africa, if we do not resolve the issue of industrialization and reviving all the industries in South Africa which are going to create employment and deal with the issues of poverty. As things stand, more than 13 million of South Africans that can be working are not working. And the last quarter of the Statistics SA in terms of unemployment was appended. There are small businesses can no longer, that should be given to small businesses. Government support is not anywhere.
Okay.
Like, truth of the matter is that ANC and EFF were both rejected by the voters. That is truth of the matter. So you can pretend like South Africans love your policies. You can pretend like the people are familiar with your policies. But the truth of the matter is that South Africans do not align themselves with whatever the EFF is trying to sell. Because if that was the case, the EFF was going to grow. But in these elections, the EFF declined, meaning that the South Africans are distancing themselves from this EFF. They are distancing themselves from everything that you people are talking about. So the EFF and the ANC, they've actually lost in these elections. Whatever that they tried to sell to the people of this country, it did not work. It did not work. The people are not in favor of these policies that you are proposing. The people actually love the EFF for the oppositions. They love you guys. When you guys are throwing the tantrums there, when you guys are doing the theatrics, but when it comes to the matters of the national importance, the people of this country do not trust you enough for you guys to actually govern this country. They don't. And that is the truth. You and the ANC is the same thing. The ANC lost 17%. They lost over 3 million votes. In 2019, the ANC got 10 million votes. In 2024, the ANC just got just over 6 billion votes. Both of your political parties are being rejected by the people on the ground. And this is the reality of the matter. You are being rejected by the people on the ground. The South Africans have rejected the ANC and the EFF. They have. And political parties like Umkhonto Wesizwe and the DA are the political parties that have actually performed very well. Despite everything that you guys said about the DA did not decline. Despite everything that you tried to throw at the DA did not decline. And when it comes to the EFF, it was worse because Umkhonto Wesizwe was formed 6 months ago. It was formed 6 months ago. And Umkhonto Wesizwe outperformed the EFF. It outperformed you. So it shows you that maybe South Africans, for some reason, maybe South Africans are trying to lean on these left policies, but they do not trust the EFF on the left policies because they chose to vote for Umkhonto Wesizwe instead of voting for the EFF. So the people do not vote, the people do not favor whatever that you guys are trying to sell. The EFF, both with the ANC, people are not feeling you. People are not feeling you. So you can talk about the solutions. You can say that nothing will ever happen without this, nothing will ever happen without that. But truth of the matter is that the voters do not think so. The voters do not think so. And maybe this is the time for the EFF and the ANC to go back and try to understand what is it exactly that the voters want. Instead of us trying to impose our solutions on these people, man, can we just listen to these people and try to understand what is it exactly that the people want? Because you have tried to impose your solutions on the people, and the people went to the booth and they rejected you. They rejected you. The same thing with the ANC. They rejected you. Maybe if your political parties can listen to the people more, maybe something can change.
And Zuko, finally, I mean, these were obviously historic elections because the ANC lost its majority for the first time ever since '94. What is it about ANC's policies which are currently not winning the votes? Very quickly.
Look, if you listen to what Comrade Victoria is saying, and you read the ANC manifesto, and you read the signed statement of intent, it basically articulates the same perspective that she's outlining. And that has been the position of the ANC. And she would know that these were our positions when we were members of the ANC Youth League, even before the formation of the EFF. And we've been able to win the day and get those policies to the ANC policy. The ANC's biggest weakness today has been lethargy and the weakness in implementing policies and policy coordination. And those who come up in the leadership of the ANC, who've been observing the strength from outside, have made the point that we need to improve policy coordination, improve implementation so that we can have better outcomes. But from a policy blueprint point of view, the ANC still has perspectives that are popular even in the majority. If we were to follow the logic of Comrade Veronica, the people who are voting for the EFF and who voted for the MK party are essentially voting for those parties because those parties are running on the ANC's historic policy platform. So the biggest issue is not the absence of a radical policy platform, but a weakness in implementation and policy coordination.
We appreciate your time, your insight, your experience. That was Govt, ANC Deputy National Spokesperson, member of the NEC, and Veronica Menta, National Chairperson of Economic Freedom Fighters.
And I must say that it was quite a balanced debate, guys. It was quite a balanced debate. But these people, sometimes these people that are representing some of these political parties, for some reason, they just decide to lie to the people of this country. And now, it seems like they've decided to take their lies on an international stage. They decided to take their lives on an international stage. So guys, I don't know, what do you think, man? Please tell me on the comment section. Don't forget to hit that like button, and the most important part, subscribe. My name is Thomas Mabao, so I will see you next time. Bye bye.